Hi there, my name is Dr. Kimberly Olson. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and marriage and family therapist. I'm excited to talk to you today about a topic that has traditionally been very laden with controversy. And I want to give you sort of a heads up that I'm coming from it at a different approach, from a therapeutic approach. So if you're watching this and wanting very desperately to sort of be right, and I can understand that. Just know up front that the want of love and acceptance from your family is a basic human desire. So you're already right. But that doesn't make this whole coming out thing any less complicated. And having done therapy for 25 years now, I can tell you there's some things that work better than others. So if your interest is predominantly in being right, this is probably not the video. If your interest is how do I work with my family to come to some sort of resolution with this, to make things work. Now, let me let you know up front that not all families have the capacity. Okay. There's some people that are so bigoted and so frightened, and everything that you're doing as a gay or lesbian child or a transgendered child is somehow a reflection of them, which stirs their shame. And some of them will never be able to deal with it. Okay. But I will share with you that in those families, there were deeper underlying problems to begin with. So if it hadn't been this, it would have been something. No, I know that doesn't make it hurt any less, but that's just suffice to say that you didn't cause this problem. You can't cure this problem. So if you're one of those folks in that position, we need to be talking about surrogate families, love and acceptance of self, and not internalizing other people's thoughts and ideas about you. I am talking about coming out to a somewhat healthy family. Okay. Now, everybody's family is dysfunctional. Okay. It's degree of dysfunction. Even if you were raised in a highly religious family, that doesn't mean that your coming out is not going to go well. Okay. But there's some things, again, that make it much more successful. First and foremost, I want to ask you to remember what it felt like for you when you were first discovering your orientation or discovering your identity. Okay. And if it was in conflict with society's values or your religious values, and how it's likely that you started off in denial, right? I'm not going to be that. Bible says I'm not that, so I am going to do all of these things to deny to myself who I am. Okay. It's much less common today, but 20 or 30 years ago, man, it wasn't uncommon at all for homosexual men, for example, to get married, have kids, and not until years and years later feel okay with coming out. It was that shameful, and that sense of denial and internalized shame. I'm going to deny that that's who I am. And I watch what's happening culturally right now with transgendered folk, and some of that same sort of shame based, you're inherently wrong, and the risk of folks internalizing those messages. Okay. But remember, that took you time, right? And you probably went through all of like Kubler-Ross's grief and loss stages, right? Denial and shock. That is not who I am. Okay. Hopefully you were never taken to conversion therapy, which by the way is illegal in California now. Progress, not perfection. You probably went through some denial and shock. Then maybe you got mad. Okay. I don't want to be this way. I don't want to be different. I want to be the person that my parents want me to be, that I want to be acceptable to my family. I want what all human beings want, which is to be loved and accepted. Maybe you got depressed. Okay. This is who I am. And I know there's no way in hell that my family's going to accept me for who I am. And so clearly that can lead to depression, especially if you're being told messages like, God doesn't like who you are. I mean, when I think about how sort of flawed and fatalistic that thinking is. And yet many of our young people and even our older folks are still told this, even though you're his creation, just like I am, just like everybody else is. But somehow what has happened with you and who you are is somehow so much worse in a lot of people's eyes. And again, we're talking about fear, we're talking about a lack of understanding, and sometimes just, overt discrimination, which of course often comes from fear. Um, but then you probably went to, again, maybe some bargaining, maybe I'll if I pray really hard, or if I do these things, then hopefully I won't be gay anymore, or I won't be transgendered anymore. And then you reach the conclusion, hopefully, that you are who you are. Okay. And my prayer is that before you ever would consider coming out to your family, that you have gone to the stage of acceptance. Okay. That no matter how much I try, no matter how much I fight this, I am who I am. And damn it, I'm going to accept who I am. Okay. I'm going to cherish who I am. And it's time for me now to tell my family. Now, imagine you're walking into a therapy session, okay? And let's say that you've had like 25 or 30 years to reconcile all this in your own head, okay? You've been through all these stages. And then you come out and your family reacts terribly. The pain, the rejection can feel insurmountable, but I'm going to ask you to do yourself a favor and your family a favor and understand they have to go through the same stages you went through. Okay. It's not, it took you years to come to acceptance for most people. Okay. Give your family a little bit of time. Okay. Because there's all sorts of things going on for them as well. Right. And so we know our own pain, we know our own experiences, but understand that there's things that go on for them as well. So first and foremost, you want to expect denial. Okay. It's a phase. Okay. That's not who you are. Okay. It's very trendy right now. Okay. And kids are being permitted to, try on all kinds of identities. They have much more of a loose definition of those things these days. And you're doing it because it's cool. Now, again, 20 or 30 years ago, those were not the things that came out of my clients' mouths, but their parents' mouths, but that's what we do here today. Because again, we have a much more sort of open-minded liberal culture than we did 20 or 30 years ago. So mom and dad are going to need to be in denial first. Okay. Give them a week or two to be in denial. How long were you in denial? Okay. So what we're doing is we're challenging everything that they think they know. Okay. If you turned out to be gay or transgendered, then what other things was I so certain of that I'm wrong about? Okay. And I know my kid, I changed her diapers. What do you mean? Okay. So this is a phase. So we're going to give them some time. Okay. You've dropped the bomb and we're going to give them some time to do the denial thing. Okay. Now, it takes time. Be patient. It is quite okay for you to say that you're not open to discussing it while they're having to do their mental gymnastics with this. Okay. A lot of them got to go to their friends. Maybe they've got to go to a pastor. Maybe they're going to a therapist to try and figure this all out and work it out. They're going to need that time, but it's perfectly okay for you to say during this time, I'm not going to be a part of that. I already tormented myself shamelessly to get to this point. Okay, bargaining. So maybe mom and dad have gone on to bargaining. Oh, okay, but don't tell anybody. Okay. So I'm trying to see you for who you are, but don't tell anybody, especially grandma. okay, the older generations, okay? And why is that? Because of the reality that not only are you stigmatized as a homosexual person or a transgendered person, okay, your parents are stigmatized. I know it sounds ridiculous, but think about everything that you've ever heard just in social discussions, on talk shows, maybe even at your own dinner table about homosexuality and transgender. The questions become, what did we do wrong? Okay, that's what's going on with your parents in that moment. What did we do to cause it? Okay, and they're going to call their friends, especially if your parents are older, and they're going to hear all kinds of bullshit. Okay, they're going to hear things like, I told you that he needed more time with his father. Okay, that's why he's doing this. Okay, I told you that you guys should not have allowed them to watch these TV shows. I told you you should have taken them to church. You know, there was always something different or wrong with that family. Okay. Now, this is especially true if your culture is super religious. Okay. Because again, they're coming from the vantage point of this is a sin, not that this is who you are. And so the question becomes, how did you fail your child? Okay. That's the question that's going through their head is, how did I fail you that made you this way? Okay. Because again, society tells us that we're products of our environment, which is true to a certain extent, except for those things that are predetermined, right? But unfortunately, because we have a ton of correlational studies to tell us that it's genetic and predetermined, but not a lot of direct causal link studies, there's still a lot of controversy surrounding that, unfortunately. Hopefully, we can help people to understand research a little better and what that all means, but not everybody's there. Okay? Your parents might be facing condemnation from their parents. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to have your son's not going to be, whatever derogatory name you want to come up with. We're not going to have that as part of our family. And sadly, sometimes we even will see, I'm going to try and beat it out of you, right? Because we're not going to have that. So what happens is there's this amazingly powerful reaction because your stigma becomes their stigma. Okay. So it's not just what's wrong with you. It's wrong. What's wrong with us? What did we do to make you this way? Okay. That's what society's suggesting. That's certainly what grandma's suggesting. And so that shame and stigma that you feel or felt previously has now been internalized by your parents. And what I will share with you is that it's not real fun to deal with that. Okay. They're going to need some time to deal with the stigma and shame, just like you did. Okay. And it's amazing to me that I've worked with families where the parents were, oh my goodness, just so torn up, so emotional, which of course, for the person that's coming out, just is experienced as complete rejection, right? And the sad part is, right, that it's this stigma that now is shared. Okay. And it takes time. So some of the people that have gone through the roughest go of it, on the way out, by the way, they become the parents that are the first to defend you. Okay. The first to tell bigoted people to pound sand. Okay. But they need some time. Give them some time. Okay. Graciousness. I want to just share with you a little story about a family that I worked with. There was a transgendered man who was coming out to his family. And as a woman, this person's name started with a J. Okay. And while this person wanted to be referred to as Michael, as a transgendered male, he did something brilliant. Okay, this wasn't my therapy intervention, this was theirs. Um, he allowed the family to call him Jay for a while. Okay. I want you to think about the brilliance behind this. Jay can be a man or a woman. Okay. Um, and yet people don't necessarily have to answer questions yet. Okay. They're given some time to deal with this. They're given some time to adjust to that whole shock of what's just occurred in their family, what's just been disclosed. Okay. Now, within the next year and a half, Michael insisted on being called Michael, and the family did. But the reaction was so different by just granting people a little bit of patience and time. Okay. Your parents are freaked out. Have some patience, give them some time. Okay, anger and shame, again, our religion is against this, society blames the parents, so we've talked about that. And what about depression? Now, from the time you were born, probably before you were born, when you were in the tum-tum, your parents had these dreams for you, okay? And it probably involved a white picket fence and 2.5 kids, okay? And they're grieving the loss of that dream. This is this is my son. This is my son. Okay. And he's going to grow up to be, I don't know, whatever's respectable in your family, but you get my point, right? Well, what if my son is my daughter? Okay. That is inconsistent with a lifetime of dreams that a parent has had for their child. Okay. So they're going to have to go through grief. Again, this is not your fault. You didn't cause it, can't cure it. This is all part of the process, right? But give them the dignity to go through that stage of depression, the loss of the dream, okay? Because they're entitled to do that as much as you were entitled to do that, okay? And then in healthy families, they moved on to acceptance and a revision of the dream, okay? Parents and grandparents in particular, they're often surprised. No, really, we can still give you grandkids. Okay, that's just trust me as a grandma, it's a really big deal. Um, and so they might be surprised. It's going to take some time to realize that a lot of the dreams that they think they're losing, it's not. It's just being replaced with a new dream. Okay, maybe you had one hell of a son. Now you got a hell of a daughter. Okay, and you got a daughter who's happy because she's true to herself. Okay, and she's able to be who she is. And as far as judgments, all of those things, a relationship with God is highly personal. And again, God doesn't make any defective people. Um, so we need to be celebrating. We need to be celebrating. And I know there's somebody out here that might be watching this video and says, yes, but the Bible says that man shall not lay down with another man. It sure does. Also talks about slavery, beating children, and all kinds of stuff that in contemporary culture, thanks to science and education, humanity, things like that, we've changed our minds about the interpretation of it is what I mean. Okay. I'm not asking you to do that. What I am asking you to do is to keep an eye on your own character defects, right? Because while you're looking at the splinter in somebody else's eye, much better for you to be dealing with the 2x4 that's in your own eye. And yes, that's biblical too. Okay. So is being judgmental. So is being hateful. So is being bigoted. Those things are sins too, if that's your vantage point. Okay. So be worried about how you're treating your child. Okay. And to the person coming out, you want this to work. Families are miraculous, right? And everybody's family's screwed up to one extent or another. We all are. But they can also become your greatest advocates. But what you can't do is body slam them. Okay. You take me for who I am. You take me for who I am right now, or I'm going to have to disconnect from you. Knock it off. Okay. That's not fair either. That's not fair either. Okay. Not that life is fair. But my hope is that your goal is to, again, as a family, work through it and become stronger as a family together. Um, I have seen, again, families where, the tension, the difficulties during the struggle and the transition were so tough. And then a year or two later, we've got Granny at the Gay Pride Parade in Palm Springs. Okay. Um, love is an amazing thing. But everybody give themselves the dignity to feel their feelings through this process. This is just what I have seen work. Yeah, it's not going to be for everybody. Like I said at the beginning of this video, you're already right. Okay. Everybody deserves love and acceptance. So it's not about that, but it's about, do you want to make it work? And for those of you whose families are so inaccessible that they would reject their own child, again, that has nothing to do with you. That has to do with something that's going on with them. And you are beautiful and you are deserving and you are loved. Okay. And God has an amazing way of providing us with surrogate families when we need them. Thanks. I really hope this was helpful.